just rinse and repeat every year, and like initiating change and making change and really pushing things is not a very not a strong suit. So they wanted a place that they could really start leveraging the state's resources and really start applying some change and exploring some new science. So I like to say they went and they were, looking for someone who doesn't follow directions very well, someone who doesn't take the word no, and someone who doesn't stay in their lane. And they're like, "We've got your guy. This is your guy right here." So I was the first person in the Office of Public Lands that was put in there. They asked me to manage it. So I showed up. It was me. I showed up into an empty room, and Scott Whitcomb was in there with me. So he's the director of the Office of Public Lands. So he reports right to the director of the DNR. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, what are we supposed to do?" And he's like, "We have to figure that out." So we sat down and really just took a grease board and started drawing lines and, coming up with ideas of what we're going to do. And we had to build a team. First thing we had to do was build a team and figure out what we were going to tackle and who we were going to have tackle it with us. So we wanted creative, innovative, excited people that were really willing to take a risk. Suspense is. Why is it not changing slide?
I just click on it with the mouse first.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is the Office of Public Lands. So this is the team that we assembled. We have a lot of people from a lot of different areas and backgrounds and fields. Happy to say that MSU was well represented on this team. So we've got myself, and Scott Whitcomb is a Spartan graduate, and Tori Irving is also a forestry graduate from Michigan State University. So Tori and I have worked together for a very long time. She's very trusted individual. She knows her stuff, and she's been wonderful to work with. And so Steve Chadwick, we hired. He came out of wildlife, and he handles our wetlands. Lindsay is our administrative support, so she makes sure that we're in the right place at the right time and not getting in trouble. John Paul, we hired out of Seattle, so his background is in fish and wetlands, a lot of flowing water, tribal engagement, so he has a lot of experience interacting with tribal representatives. So we hired him out of the Pacific Northwest, and he moved his family to the Grand Rapids area. And Sarah Nelson, she's from the west side of the Lower Peninsula and worked in conservation districts. So she had a lot of really good experience and a lot of good contacts and networking. So it's a wonderful team. We're small, we're fast, we're nimble, we're able to get stuff done, we're able to pivot quickly and be highly effective. Marley Wolf is still our very first My Healthy Climate Corps member. So the Whitmer administration, as part of the My Healthy Climate Plan, expanded the AmeriCorps program to basically hire young professionals that are recently out of school and get them in the workforce so that they can start working on climate related work and really get some strong work experience and exposure to kind of their career path. So Marley was hired by us last year, and we hired her again for a second term. So she's been wonderful. She's had a lot of overlap with our partnership with MSU, which I'll go into here in a little bit. And we also have Callista, who is MSU's first My Healthy Climate Corps member, just started, correct? So this is your just started today. So yeah, brand new, very exciting. So now I don't have to share the Office of Public Lands Climate Corps member with Sandra anymore. So no, I'm just kidding. So Marley and Callista can now work very closely together and continue to build that collaborative relationship between the DNR and MSU. So great program. It's been very fun. It's been very successful in our eyes, and they've gotten to do some very, very cool work. Partnerships. So my office is highly focused on building effective, meaningful partnerships that can produce a product, that can produce results, that can kind of move the needle and make sure that we get things done. One of those partnerships is with Brad Garman. He's with MEDC, Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry. So he is kind of our on-ramp to the outdoor recreation industry. So we work with Polaris, with Rivian, with, mountain bike companies, so that we are able to demonstrate that Michigan is a destination and that there is a huge natural resource base here that all these innovators and industry folks can utilize, instead of going to California and Arizona and, the other states. Like, a lot of it's right here. We're good at making stuff. We're good at building things, and we have the resources to support that. Also, Sandra Lupian, who is here in the room with us, she is probably our most close collaborator. We work with her just about every day on, developing and building Michigan's MassTimber initiative and, building that environment. So we can bring the perspective of the state and the natural resource side of the state. Sandra's able to bring the university and the technical expertise and the contacts with the MassTimber industry. So when we were sitting in the room trying to come up with what we're going to do, like, what's our vision? What's our impact? What do we want to do? How do we want to be known? We wanted to be able to coordinate. So we're housed in the executive office, and that's intentional so that we can reach across all the other divisions. We're not, loyal to one division. We're in the executive office, and we can step into any room and start building conversations between forestry and wildlife, or fish and forestry, or parks and law. We're able to facilitate those discussions. We're also able to innovate. So we're able to step out and get on the phone and go check out a new, piece of technology on energy storage that can be deployed in a remote location. Like, that's our focus. We're able to go engage with industry and start bringing some of those innovation pieces to the state. And then once we get a test case built, we want to be able to scale up and magnify and kind of roll out these projects on a larger scale across the state. So this is all great. Then they said, this is awesome. We like where you're going. How are you going to pay for it? Wait, what? What do you mean? How are you going to pay for it? So fortunately, we had been through the process where we were developing the big wild carbon project in the Pigeon River country. And those carbon credits sold right about the same time. So my office is funded completely out of carbon credit revenue generated on Michigan's public lands. So we're able to take that money that's generated by those carbon credits in the Pigeon River country and then reinvest them into our programs in the state of Michigan to do more climate action, to do more projects, to do more, more of everything. So we're able to take that funding that's secured and dedicated to our office and really roll it out and again, amplify it and make it more effective. So the areas of focus, these are what we call our pillars. When I got there, we had 3 pillars, where I think we're up to 7 or 8 now. When I got there, we focused on public lands, climate, and renewable energy transition. Those were our big areas of focus. Like, that was the target. We've recently got dam removals. There's over 200 dams on Michigan state land. That's a lot of dams, and they're all very old and all in very different conditions. And we may not necessarily want to own 200 dams or maintain 200 dams. So we have to go through the process of analyzing, reviewing, deciding what we're going to do with them. We have Steve Chadwick, who is focused on wetlands and really exploring the climate benefits of wetlands and how can we, again, amplify the effectiveness of our wetlands. Outdoor recreation industry, we covered that a few minutes ago with Brad Garman. And then our newest pillar is MassTimber. So MassTimber is now housed in the Office of Public Lands. It used to be housed in Forest Resource Division. There was some change in staff there, and we stepped up and said, we want MassTimber. So MassTimber is now housed in the Office of Public Lands, which is why we have a very close relationship with Sandra. So public lands, when public land is a very general term, when we say public lands, it can mean anything to anybody. Really, what we try to focus on is strategy. So we completed a land strategy recently that really dials in and makes sure that we are strategic when we're acquiring land, when we're disposing of land, trying to fill in holdings, trying to get rid of, outliers, making sure that the state land portfolio that the state of Michigan owns is the right acreage in the right place. So we're really focused on that. I oversee the land acquisition strategy team, which is represented by all of the resource divisions, and then all of the purchases and disposals then come through my office, and then we make a recommendation to the director. Climate, we work very closely with all the divisions. We lead the climate team for the state, which has representation from all the divisions, and really dials in with our facilities, our operations, our policies. I'm kind of that annoying guy that shows up to every meeting and, you know, steps in at the last minute and it's like, hey, did you guys consider climate in this decision? And really just trying to make sure that we make sure that climate is in the discussion of every decision that we make and every policy that we revise and every policy that we make, that climate is a factor and it's part of the discussion, because it hasn't always been part of the discussion. So we're trying to make sure that it's now common and it's part of just the way we do business moving forward. The renewable energy transition. So the Whitmer administration has made a commitment by 2050. We're going to be carbon neutral in the state of Michigan. It's 2024 is almost over. So 25 years is not a very long time. So in the careers of, you know, everybody in this room, we're likely going to play a role in that transition. So the DNR is the largest landowner in the state of Michigan. So the state of Michigan owns the largest piece of property in the state of Michigan. And we felt that we have a responsibility to lead by example and make sure that we do take a leadership role and that we demonstrate the value in the energy transition. So we have multiple projects underway on Michigan's public lands, virtual, power purchase agreements. So there are places that we have solar arrays that we're selling energy back to the grid, which is then distributed to communities. We have solar arrays on some of our buildings. We have solar arrays on most of our fish hatcheries. So we're really going through and looking at our infrastructure and determining how can we be better at more responsible with our energy. Anybody recognize that building there? Probably, I hope so. So yes, we collaboratively lead the MassTimber initiative for the state of Michigan with MassTimber at MSU, great partner. We just renewed our agreement for 5 years. Yeah, we're in for the long haul. It's been a great experience. We've made a lot of connections and seen good progress over the last few years. We'll get deeper into MassTimber here in a few minutes. Outdoor recreation industry, of course, we touched on that. Really, our goal is to facilitate and put together these public-private partnerships. So PPP, you'll hear that a lot. State government is, like I said, we're really good at working with ourselves, in our lane, in our tunnel, and looking forward and the way things are trending. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to do things the same way that we've always done them. So we need to start getting industry to become partners and help shape the way that we do things moving forward, because there's a lot of power, there's a lot of influence, there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of opportunity for state governments, local governments to start partnering with some of these private businesses. We did a partnership with a brewery over in Saginaw. They brewed a special beer called Rainbow Rodeo IPA. And they came to us and said, we just want to help. What can we do? And they said, can we give you money? We're like, no, don't just give money to the DNR, because we don't want it to just evaporate into the the DNR as a whole. I said, let's be very specific about what we apply it to. And so we made a specific target and decided money generated from this partnership will go to freshwater stream restoration. And we've had, very good success, very good publicity. And that's an example of a public-private partnership that has been very successful. And we can point to what we're working on and say, your work helped accomplish this. Wetlands, Steve handles a lot of wetlands, like I said, really just trying to maximize the potential and make sure that, our wetlands are in the best condition possible and that we're protecting them and making sure that they're really like serving the benefits that they can. Dam removals, like I said, we've got a lot of aging infrastructure that we need to pay very close attention to. They built a lot of dams a long time ago, and there's a lot of places that they're failing and could potentially impact, human lives and human safety. So we're going through, and it's very expensive to remove a dam. So 200 dams times however $1 million a piece it is to remove them adds up very quickly. So we're again, strategy. I say the word strategy a lot. We're very strategic on how we approach these, and we want to make sure that we're picking off the highest and most critical ones first. So, as I said, our core values and principles, we want to connect people to people, business to people, business to business, business to government, people to government. We want to connect people that aren't already connected, right? As natural resource professionals, we're really good at engaging with other natural resource professionals because we all talk the same lingo, and we all, but when you have all the same people in the same room, you don't always get the full story. So we've really made a big effort to reach out and bring in other people that can provide different perspectives. So that leads to engagement, innovation, try new things. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, learn from it, move on. And, we say fail faster. So let's go in. If we're going to break it, let's break it early and move on and figure out what went wrong. And then we want to serve as a lead role, not only in the department, not only in the state, but in the US. Since the 2 years this office has been in place, we've gotten international recognition. We were brought to the United Kingdom to work with England, Scotland, and Wales on some of their climate initiatives because they recognized that Michigan was taking a lead role. And then we don't want to just walk away when we're done. We want to empower and provide resources and really make sure that everybody that's on board, we're behind them, helping them be successful and continue to move forward. This is just going to say everything I just said. So I'm going to go into a couple projects that we're working on right now that are kind of a big focus, and then I'm gonna really dive a little bit deeper into how the DNR partners with MSU. So Michigan the Beautiful was born out of the 30 by 30 initiative that came out of the Paris Agreement. The Biden administration said, we're going to do this, and largely said each state, we're going to leave it up to each state to figure out how they're going to protect 30% of their lands and waters by the year 2030. They said, go. And that was basically the guidance that we got. So we had this blank marker board that we could build and design our own, at the time, 30 by 30 accounting method to make sure that, if we're at 25%, that we find out where to get more. If we're at 40%, that's great. We can figure out how we can improve. So we wanted to make it specific to Michigan. So we titled it Michigan the Beautiful. We held a summit and invited all these partners to come provide information and recommendations and ideas and what's important to them. And then as we got through it, we're like, we don't want to just make this an accounting exercise. This isn't just a spreadsheet, right? Like a number's a number, and a number can be meaningless. Let's make sure that what we're doing is effective, and that, if we're at 28%, that it's the most important 28%. If we're at 40%, that's great. How do we get to 41%? So we wanted to make sure that we brought in lots of conservation partners so that we could capture as much value and as many voices as we possibly could. And that's what we did. So first step was engagement, to seek and gather input. We did that. We held a summit at Lansing Community College last year, very well attended. We have an advisory committee that we have regular calls with. We were able to then set priorities. And right now we're at the creating tools and the pathways report. So that's being drafted and written as we speak. And hopefully by the end of the year, it will be out for public review. And then we can implement, monitor, review, and then report out to make sure that we're doing what we said we're going to do. So that's part of that land strategy piece. It fits in very nicely with that. Keweenaw acquisition, again, another land strategy piece. Up in the Keweenaw Peninsula, there was a large investment firm company that still owns a bunch of property up there. They were putting about 32,000 acres up for sale, and the community became concerned because they were able to have public access to it historically, and they were concerned it was going to be sold to a developer, and then they would lose their public access. We partnered with the Nature Conservancy, and we're now in the process of building like a governance model up there so that it can be basically split up into multiple pieces, still have public access. The state of Michigan is planning on purchasing about 10,000 acres out at the tip of the Keweenaw, which fits in nicely with our other ownership right now. We're going through multiple funding opportunities. So Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund, Land Exchange Facilitation Fund. So we're doing a lot of engagement up there with the community. We're doing a lot of engagement with the tribes up there, making sure that we're very transparent and everybody is comfortable with the direction we're going. And then really making sure that 32,000 acres of a very unique landscape is still available to the public. Utility scale on solar lands, part of the energy transition. We've got two very large solar projects underway. One of them is an old mine site in Dickinson County, so in the West UP. There's an old mine tailing site, basically a large brownfield that is very degraded. And, we determined that rather than sit there vacant and just be kind of a non-productive land, let's throw some solar panels on there. So we've got about 100 megawatt solar panel installation going on there. Construction should start hopefully in the spring. And it'll provide a lot of revenue to the local communities, local townships. It'll provide energy to the grid up there, and it'll put kind of non-productive brownfield back into some sort of production. And then we've got one that we're developing in the Lower Peninsula up in Roscommon County. And we're in the earlier stages of that. We're not quite at the construction phase yet, but we're still exploring like footprints and how can we minimize the impact to the resource. So let's get into MassTimber at MSU. So I've mentioned several times that we're tied very closely with Sandra and MassTimber at MSU. It really is, it's kind of the power couple, right? Like the DNR can really bring and represent the resource and the support and leverage of the state and the department. And then Sandra is able to bring the resources of the university, the knowledge, the research, the background. So generally when, there's a conference that's around MassTimber, Sandra and I are both there talking, about what we're doing together and how we can get moving forward. So for those of you that don't know, MassTimber is kind of a general term that's used for building big things out of big chunks of wood that are, put together out of smaller pieces of wood. That's how I kind of very simple. That's how my kids say it too. But there's several types of MassTimber. There's nail laminated timber, glue laminated timber, cross laminated timber. So there's all these different forms of MassTimber that fall under the umbrella term of MassTimber. So it's typically used in large buildings. So like the STEM building, that's a MassTimber building. So it's got steel, it's got concrete, and it's got large MassTimber panels throughout. So if you haven't had a tour of that, talk to Sandra. She loves giving tours of it. It's an amazing place. Some multifamily mixed use buildings like some community centers, the airport in Portland is MassTimber, the Walmart headquarters in Arkansas, all their new buildings are MassTimber. So it's generally building large buildings out of manufactured wood beams. The materials are custom made. So generally when they show up on site, they're cut to size, they're fabricated, so they kind of just fit together like a really fancy large, Lego set. which cuts down on your construction time. This is a project that's currently underway right now. The DNR recognized the value of mass timber and worked with Sandra. Shannon Lott, she's the deputy director of DNR, was really the driving force behind this. And we needed to build a new office in Newberry. And we figured this was a great opportunity to put a showcase piece in the Upper Peninsula in a logging community and build a really beautiful large building out of wood. And then to take it one step further, we went through the process to test and certify red pine so that red pine could be used in this building, which had never been used before. So now red pine has been de-risked, certified, and is eligible to be used in mass timber construction, thanks to the state of Michigan and MassTimber at MSU and Boggin Timbers and all these other partners that worked on it. So that was a huge step, was to use Michigan source red pine to build a Michigan state government building in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. That's a huge, huge step. And it should be opening and very end of calendar year, early next year. So if you're up there, definitely check it out.
So Patrick, like this,
Yeah.
Where was the mass timber process?
So the trees were cut in Michigan sourced by Buer, and then they were sent to Washington to Boggin Timbers. And then they manufactured the panels and then sent them back and were assembled here. So that was the logical next step, right? So the STEM building was, not Michigan, not locally sourced timber. It was not locally manufactured, but it was assembled here. So that was our next step. So ideally, we would continue to make progress to be able to build, manufacture, and assemble, at least in the Great Lakes region. So that's the step we're headed, or that's the direction we're headed. This was the next step in the process. Benefits of mass timber. Obviously, it's made out of wood. People like things made out of wood. This room, it feels warm, right? There's that biophilic feeling of people like to be around things made out of wood. Has a lower embodied carbon footprint. So that wood, these tables, these walls, everything is storing that carbon while it's still in place. And it reduces the use of carbon and steel. So the prefab options, they can assemble them faster. I think they assembled the Newberry building, was it like 11 weeks?
It was fast.
It was fast. Like I got up there when it started, and then it seemed like I got an email saying, hey, we're putting the last panel on. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I was just there. I mean, it's fast. They just show up on trucks and they just start standing them up and stacking them up. They don't have to wait for cement to dry. They don't have to wait for, fabrication. It's there, it's ready to put together. And it really touches on a big part of Michigan, right? Like, so the forest products industry is Michigan's second largest industry behind automobiles. That's huge. So it really touches on a couple of different industries in Michigan that are very important. Like I said earlier, Michigan's very good at designing and making things. And if we can design and make things out of wood, that hits multiple industries, that keeps people in the state, working in the state, good paying jobs in the state. And, it sort of like cross-pollinates these large industries in Michigan that there's a lot of opportunity out there that we need to continue to explore. And this seems to check a lot of those boxes. So coming up in December, Michigan Mass Timber Update. Annually, we have a meeting to sort of discuss the state of the state, right? The state of mass timber in the state. How do we do last year? What did we accomplish? What did we want to accomplish that we didn't? What do we want to accomplish next year? So we all get together. Last year it was in Detroit at the Carpenters Union, which is a mass timber building, and they were training carpenters to assemble mass timber prefab kits there. While we were there, we got to watch them assemble these kits. This year it'll be at Adelaide Point, which is in Muskegon, which is a massive mass timber facility that is right on Lake Michigan, and it's gorgeous. So we'll be there, and it brings industry together. It brings forest products together. It brings engineers together, it brings architects together, it brings, you know, universities and states and everybody that has an interest in this product, it brings them together to have this conversation. So what's next? So a couple weeks ago in Detroit, Bedrock and MassTimber at MSU co-hosted an event down at One Woodward Place in Detroit, and they invited this, 7 Great Lakes states representatives to Detroit to get together and say, let's talk about mass timber, where we're going, building a strategy. So it was recognized early on that if Michigan does one thing and Wisconsin does something and Minnesota does something and Indiana does, if we all do our own thing, we'll all fail together. If we have a strategy that we all work together, we will all benefit as a whole. And this was kind of that first step in bringing all those states together and having an open conversation together in the same room with sticky notes and markers and, breakout sessions. And it was 2 days in Detroit. I was there for most of it. I had to take off for a different engagement. But the time that I was there, I interacted with the 6 other states that were there, plus people from Michigan. And I got a lot out of it. And I feel now that the conversation has started, that we're starting to get pointed in the right direction, and that there's more of an understanding of this is a collaborative process, not a competitive process. So we can all benefit by building something together. So continue to lead. How is Michigan going to continue to lead? So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we de-risked the use of red pine in mass timber applications. We've done that. Like Michigan in the last 5 years has been the state of doing things for the first time. Well, nobody's done that before. Great. Michigan raises their hand. Let's try it. Let's do it. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. Michigan stepped up and de-risked red pine. So now the other states that grow red pine now have an opportunity to put that red pine into a new market. The downside of red pine is red pine already has pretty high value markets. So red pine is not a species that's hard for us to sell. When you put red pine in the market, it sells. You get dimensional lumber, you get utility poles, you get cabin logs, there's a well-established market for red pine that's already existing. So we're basically inserting a new high value market that could potentially compete with other existing markets. So the other thing we're running into is CCC era red pine is now reaching maturity. We're starting to cut a lot of that red pine off the landscape. And we're now losing red pine acres off the landscape. We're not replacing them as fast as we're cutting. So you're starting to see the red pine acreage in the state decline. Red pine often requires high intensity site preparation. So you're trenching, you're planting, sometimes you're spraying, you're doing a lot, sometimes you're burning, you're doing a lot of very expensive site preparation to get quality and high survivability red pine plantations established. Naturally occurring red pine is on the landscape, but that's declining as well. So what's next? What do we step into next? Well, jack pine is another species in Michigan that has a lot of acreage. There's a lot of jack pine on the landscape. Jack pine's not real valuable. Like when we put jack pine on the market, it's got to be a really good sale, really close to something else, and have a lot of volume in it. Otherwise, they're going no bid. We've had a lot of difficulty selling jack pine sales recently. So it's kind of hard to see, but the map here that I have is obviously the northern lower peninsula. And if you see the kind of mottled coloring, those are the jack pine stands in the northern lower peninsula on state land. So there's obviously Forest Service land in there that's not identified. There's private land in there that's not identified. But just what we're showing right there, there's about 300,000 acres of jack pine represented right there. So there's a large amount of acreage, a large amount of volume. One of the challenges that we face with jack pine is the key species that we manage for Kirtland warbler. So when you're planting them 600 to 800 stems per acre, a lot of times you're getting very small diameters and they really just kind of stagnate out, and you can let them grow longer, but they're really not going to get that much bigger. So again, that adds an additional challenge to an already challenging market, is how do you get rid of that small diameter jack pine? In a lot of cases, it gets chipped, sent to a cogen plant, and we make electricity out of it. So if you look at the resource here, There's a large volume, a large amount of acreage. It's pretty well distributed. The majority of jack pine is located in Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So those 3 states, the Great Lakes states. So there's a large volume of jack pine available, and they're experiencing the same markets that we have in Michigan. It's difficult to get rid of. So one of the good things is jack pine's a short rotation. In Michigan on state lands, we generally rotate jack pine at 49 years. So you can get 2 rotations of jack pine for 1 rotation of red pine. Again, it's often costly to reforest, to regenerate. So if you can get natural generation, that's great. But if you artificially regenerate jack pine, like for Kirtland warbler stands, you're looking at $200 to $250 minimum for site prep, which is very, very costly, especially when you don't have a high return on that final product. So we are exploring opportunities in figuring out how do we get jack pine into the mass timber market? How do we de-risk jack pine and certify jack pine to be a species that we're able to use in the manufacture of, cross laminate timbers and other mass timber applications. MSU also has bio-based alternate adhesives that they're developing here. We'd like to be able to test those as well. So if we could de-risk jack pine, de-risk bio-based adhesives and get those on the market, that would potentially open up a large, high-value market for a species that we're really struggling with on the landscape. And so, hang on. This is the opportunity for us to really step in, engage with industry. So engage with loggers, engage with foresters, engage with the Forest Service, engage with private landowners to really start having that discussion around how do we get them to partner with us and build that public-private partnership so that they can be a supplier and support the certification and de-risking of jack pine moving forward. Because if that is able to be done, it opens up that wood basket for larger and higher value markets moving forward. So, does anybody have any questions? Larry.
I made a list.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm glad you only have a small piece of paper.
Yeah, it's mobile paper.
Oh, you just fold it up.
So I guess the first question I have is this last note about jack pine.
Yes.
I know early on there was, and maybe continuing work with Michigan Tech on looking at various hardwood species as well. Where does that stand, and is there potential there? Or we kind of decided no, the hardwoods won't be part of it.
So they're still working on hardwood.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Larry asks, what's the status of hardwood CLT at Michigan Tech, and is the jack pine exploring jack pine in mass timber part of the same project? They're still doing work on hardwood CLT. I guess I'm not totally sure what the status is of it, but this is separate from that. So this would be a separate project. The hardwood and the softwood manufacturing is quite different. So we would be doing something different from that.
Yeah, but nonetheless, is this something that you're the one that is this a good potential now as we look at it, or are we starting to say, no, that was a nice path to go down, but we aren't going to follow that further?
The hardwoods?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I respond?
Please.
They were not gonna be able to hear me online, so I'm gonna repeat everything they said exactly as I did. So the hardwoods, yeah, so Tech is doing a lot of work on testing different hardwood species, but what they're finding is that more promising than just like pure hardwood layups are hardwood softwood hybrids. And they have some really exciting results that they've been starting to reveal about specific combinations and adhesive types and stuff that are working really well. And so one thing that it's going to end up happening, I think, is that so Isha and Dr. Raji Pokarel have been working on a supply chain analysis, looking at different models from Michigan wood and mass timber. And they're going to start expanding to look at hardwoods and also some of these hybrid layups I think that Tech is doing, so that we're actually building on that from like the market development side. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And again, DNR has helped to fund some of Tech's equipment and research as well.
So Sandra said that Michigan Tech is still working on hardwood mass timber, but they're finding that the more promising direction is to do hardwood and softwood hybrid layups moving forward.
So there's one question from the chat, and has there been any interest in mass timber manufacturing companies for bio-based adhesives? If yes, what specific wood adhesives are they interested in?
So the question is, has there been interest in bio-based adhesive manufacturing in Michigan?
If your organization, mass timber companies are interested in using the bio-based adhesives, like
In Michigan or anywhere?
in general, I think.
Well, I can say this, I know, sorry, Patrick.
You're fine.
Dr. Mojdeh Najad in the Department of Forestry's lab is developing a lot of great bio-based adhesives for a variety of applications, including mass timber. And has at least one contract testing those on the floor of a mass timber manufacturer right now, with really great results in terms of both adhesion and affordability. And I know there are other companies interested in collaborating as well.
So yes, there is interest in the use of bio-based adhesives, and there is some testing in application going on right now as we speak.
Those adhesives used to stick together the pieces of mass timber?
Not the pieces themselves, like the big beams that are manufactured. They're used primarily to glue the dimensional pieces together to build the beams. And then they press them. So, David.
Good talk, Patrick.
Thank you.
Good to see you all grown up.
Thank you. I know.
You
I
said it.
I was looking. I think you two were the two that were here when I was here. So
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't.
Not
make
many
you,
of us left.
hopefully it doesn't make you guys feel super old either.
So I don't know, I have a sort of a comment, maybe there's a question there too on the jack pine thing. I wonder about, like, my take on jack pine is it's not a lack of market, but it's a stand age management problem. And so like there's markets for it, but my take is like with those no bid things, it's because the stand age distribution is so skewed that what you're selling is too small, and it's like a bunch of one stick, if even, trees, and the loggers just they can't do it. So I mean, I guess like the mass timber does sound like it has potential, but I mean, you're gonna have to pay.
So I
You're
think
gonna have to be ready to pay a lot, like until the stand age distribution is resolved.
yeah, I think it's a both and, right? Like I think there's both of that going on, right? You're right. There is some stand distribution, some spikes in the model, right? So when you go into a 49-year-old jack pine stand that's 800 stems to the acre with one stick, if you're lucky, per tree, those are hard to get rid of. When you go into a jack pine stand that's, naturally occurring and, you're getting logs out of there.
Yeah.
Those are pretty easy to get rid of, right? Because it's worth the diesel fuel to go in there and cut that sail. So, yeah, that's part of it, is tying that forest management piece to the markets, to the wood products, to the, what makes the most economic sense. The challenge is you've got that KW component in there, which requires a certain amount of acreage be managed in that very specific fashion that produces the one stick trees at 800 stems to the acre. So
Yeah. Actually, could I throw another one
Sure.
out there? Okay, so I think you should de-risk white pine.
white pine.
Yes,
I agree.
Yeah.
because red pine is projected to be climate loser.
climate loser.
All the other management things. There's very little genetic material to work with for adaptation. white pine grows all the way down into Georgia and Carolinas. It grows anywhere in Michigan. Ultimate generalist.
Yeah, we agree. White pine is,
State tree. It's a beautiful tree.
it is, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yes, that is another one that
I
should
remember-
certainly be addressed.
Yeah, David Price was here when we were interviewing for, when Jeremy Johnson was for his position, and I brought up the same thing, and it's, oh, we want red pine, we want pine adapted red pine.
Yeah, Emily.
All right, hard left turn,
Yeah.
and this may be a better beer conversation. Solar,
Yes,
email traffic in my inbox with people pissed off about the DNR putting solar panels.
on public land.
Seems traumatic.
I wonder where those emails were going. We do, so we're very, I get those emails too.
Okay, good.
And we're very open and transparent about the process.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that there's no concerns over being like things happening behind, the curtain, because that's not how we manage public land. We have very in-depth public engagement strategies and sessions taking place. The developers are very engaged with the communities that are that it's being developed in. So like in Dickinson County, they've engaged in all the townships, all the township meetings, all the local communities, and largely have gotten like a lot of support, because once you get through the initial fear of the change, a lot of times they're able to recognize the value that it's going to bring to that community. So the one in Dickinson County, we're in a good place. That one was also easier because it was a brownfield. So it's easier to justify a brownfield. The one in Roscommon County, we're getting going on the public engagement session here very soon. And the developer has engaged with the local communities already. And we do face feedback on, or pushback on that, because of, it's a county that has a lot of public land, and, it's used for a lot of different uses. And we want to make sure that those uses are still available in the area, even if some of that land is converted to solar use. We're also making sure that we target like low productivity. We don't want to go into like high productivity, high investment stands that are, some of the best forest in the area. We want to make sure that we're targeting low productivity, highly disturbed sites. So that the one in Roscommon is up against an airport, it's up against I-75. So there's a fair amount of disturbance in those areas already. So
does OPL and FRD work together on those projects?
Yep. So OPL is the lead. So we do take the lead on that, and then we engage with the FRD staff, the local staff in Roscommon, in the management unit, and then the district, to make sure that like our messaging is consistent, right? Because we want to make sure that the messaging that's coming out is accurate, and that it's not, Patrick's version. It's the version of what's happening. So we want to make sure that we have accurate information going out at all levels, and that we're available. So if questions are asked, that we're available to answer them, and meet on site if they want. Things like that.
And I know Skoll is next, but this builds on Emily's question, and my question is,
Skoll.
has OPL done any carbon
Almost.
analysis? They like what's going to be the difference in carbon emissions versus storage if we remove some trees and put in these solar panels?
We do have some. I don't have them with me today, but on those low productivity forests, it's not very intuitive, but solar comes out as the beneficial land use in some of those situations. So
Could I add to this too? This was number one on my list.
Yeah.
We'll do the rest of this over lunch.
okay.
Number one, my name is Larry Leapers, for those who don't know me. I'm former faculty member here. I'm currently chair of the Michigan SAF policy team. And so there's this concern that comes up there. I'm also a member of the Timber Forest Products Advisory Council in the state, and it's come up there.
Yep.
And given your early comments of we test this out and then we look to expand it. So can you share what those expansionary discussions are around solar and forest. And even if they come out short term, it's because you aren't looking at all the factors.
So what we're it's called the Groveland mine site. That's in the West UP. That was like our pilot, right? That was to sort of figure out the process, figure out the way things work. So that was our test. And then, but it was a brownfield. So we started targeting brownfields throughout the state of like, does this work? Does this, grid have capacity? Can we put this here? Is it close enough to a corridor? Then we started, doing some GIS analysis to figure out where do some of these areas that check those boxes for grid capacity, corridor distance, disturbance areas, low productivity. And then we started dialing in on those areas. When I hear the concerns that you're mentioning, like we were at the Forest Products Show in Gaylord, and I talked to somebody up there, and there's this perception that there's going to be 10,000 acres of state land converted to solar, and that's not it at all, right? Like we have no desire to do this mass conversion. Right now we've got 2 projects underway. We're looking at probably 1 more. So all said and done, maybe like 1,500 acres total, which is not a huge footprint in the grand scheme of things, but it's a change. If you look at the amount of oil and gas use on public land, that's far beyond that. All those 1 acre well pads add up to way more than 1,500 acres. But it's all consolidated into one area, so it's highly visible. So we've been very upfront about you'll see like stats and snippets of, we need 400 square miles of solar panels in the state of Michigan to meet our energy needs. And that a lot of times immediately goes to the DNR is going to put in 400 square miles of solar panels, and that's not it. So we want to make sure that the messaging is very clear from the front is we're not looking at this large scale mass conversion of public land. We're looking at very strategic, very specific, just a handful of projects to make sure that we are meeting our energy needs and still maintaining the responsibility of a land manager. Looking at all, as a land manager, you're burdened with all types of use, and it's easy to, my background's in forestry, so when I stepped into the solar room discussion, it was like, no, it was very hard for me to really like start looking at all these other land use methods. So good question. Thank you, Larry. Yeah.
Hey, Patrick. Hi, Dave Skoll here.
Hey.
Nice presentation. Really nice in some respects. But on this issue of the solar panels, I too am getting inundated. I was woken up in the middle of the night once with somebody I think they were even inside your agency saying that this is an issue. And it's not an amenity issue for the folks calling me. It's a net balance of carbon question. It's that you're cutting forest, creating an emission source to put in panels that are supposedly renewable. This is akin to the palm oil debates of many years ago in Malaysia and Indonesia, in which the Dutch government was putting in palm oil for renewable fuels, but they were cutting down rainforest to do that. And it's just a bad look. And some accounting shows that it's erasing the net gains from the solar, the renewable energy, in fact. So yeah, I haven't responded to anybody in any way on this, but I was surprised to hear Emily say that. But I guess it is a kind of an important issue that's emerging.
It is, and it was expected, right? Like people in Michigan love their trees, they love their forests. Like we knew that this was going to be a contentious issue, and so again, like balancing that initiative from the governor's office with the desires and uses of the people of Michigan. How do we balance that? And that's the place we are now, and that's why we're trying to make sure that we're very upfront, very transparent, sticking to policy, and where policy isn't in place, so that we make sure that we follow our land use rules, and that we're upfront and engaging with the communities as we do it.
But the point is it's undercutting your initiatives on solar to reduce emissions and be climate healthy and all that. Have you done any like real quantitative estimates of the amount of emissions created and counterbalancing the emissions avoided by going to solar? Actually do the math?
The energy transition team, which has representatives from all divisions, they've gone through and done a fair amount of calculations and math. Chris Hoving's on that team. Some of you may know him. But yeah, so that's all stuff we're working on.
I got to follow up on something else. You know, harvested wood products are a sink, but not by themselves. The harvested wood products have to be replaced by an equal amount of regrowing forests. And that's something I think some people miss all the time. Are you doing anything with the MassTimber to monitor those sites where the timber comes from to ensure that they are actually sinks for carbon? And this isn't about the replacement emissions. This is about the generation of sinks back in the landscape.
So the majority of the land, at least the state lands that MassTimber material would be coming off of would be state forest land, which is dual certified. So there'd be monitoring, green space monitoring, reforestation, like requirements and checks every so many years. So we'd be relying on those. And then
would you put any prioritize FSC management sites?
Would I prioritize them over non-certified sites?
Yeah, if you really get in the carbon accounting business side of it all and look at the wood sourcing from FSC type of management.
I guess I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if
They are FSC.
right, they're FSC and SFI. So
they are, yeah, okay. Yeah. And then the other thing is, you know, there's a lot of controversy about this in the sense that if you're sourcing from out of state, for instance, right, and it goes into some sort of state accounting system, like the one that Michigan wants to do, and it also goes into the Minnesota accounting system where you source the wood, who actually gets the sink term for that? You can't double count it, right?
Double count it, right?
Yeah, so you really have to get that kind of
That's
worked
right.
out.
Yeah, that's a good point, and those have yet to be sorted out yet.
Yeah, they need to be. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you,
Excellent.
David. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
We got enough room for everybody with the room towards this. Thanks so much for coming along. Yeah, sign in with my name. Yeah, I want to sign out, so that's Okay, I think it's